Okay, hello everyone. For today's podcast video cast that we're doing, I am bringing on, finally, I'm not going to talk about myself the entire time. Instead, I'm going to bring on one of my friends who I've known for a long time, Jamar Nicholas. Jamar Nicholas has just been doing comics for a long time. We've got a mutual love of D&D, and he just got a really great news about Scholastic with his book Leon, the Protector of the Playground. So I'm going to make him talk about that, and we're going to discuss all those things. So I am not going to wait any longer. Let's move on over. Jamar, how are you doing?
Good morning, David.
This
Good
is,
morning.
it feels like in the pandemic, last time we saw each other, you were the one hosting and I was the one being interviewed.
I know. It's a reversal of fortune.
What are we going to do sometime when we meet up and neither one of us are hosting and we're not like posting it anywhere?
I don't know. I think everybody just walks around with selfie sticks now, and this is content. We're just leaving money on the table by not recording this.
I know. I was watching GMA yesterday morning and someone was like live streaming a cougar that was trying to attack him and he's like
What?
backing away and I'm like, "Dude, turn off your phone." Like
That doesn't sound like best practices right
I
there.
know, and he's like backing away from it and the cougar's, trying to and I'm like, "Dude, just it's okay, man. You don't need this to be on video."
Did he live? I'm
He did
assuming he
live.
lived.
He got away. It took about 6 minutes, but he was able to get away. But
It'd be funny if they found the footage of the cougar's stomach, like I don't know, like a Blair Witch scenario or
yeah,
something.
I'm like, your wife and kids do not need that video to be the last thing they see. Like, just,
Well, I mean, that feels like Darwinism at its finest, right? Like, come on,
that's true.
fam. You gotta make some better choices.
That's true. That's true. Well, this is kind of fun. I'm actually I'm happy to be playing the host right now because one of the things I was realizing when I was thinking back on our friendship is you've spent a lot of your time really focused on the community and on other people. And what I mean by that is I was part of the JNN, the Jamar Nicholas Network, back in the message board days. And so instead of creating a message board that was all about you like invited all your friends to get their own little message boards because someday we'll have to explain to the kids the whole message board thing. This is before Facebook, before Twitter. This
Before
was
Discord,
before
yeah.
Discord. It was us and just a whole ladder of posts on a whole variety of topics. And you created the JNN really to highlight other people. But then flash forward a few years later and you've started up your own Patreon. But instead of using the Patreon to talk about all your stuff, you've been interviewing other people.
Wow, I didn't think about it that way. Yeah. So if I can expound on that a
Yeah,
little bit.
please do.
So probably right before that, I was co-hosting this. This is pre-Google for the kids. The PG era of our lives. I co-hosted a kind of like a cartoonist creative class called the Indie Cred All Stars, and I think David, you just missed that. You would have been in that if I'd met you like maybe a year earlier.
Just
Um,
close.
so this close, and the iCreds or the Indie Creds were a bunch of people I just kind of picked off of the internet that I saw who were doing really interesting things, but they were just kind of floating in that in the mire of early internet without a door to float hold on to in the water. So I was like, hey, I have this thing, come hang out with us. And that's really the genesis of it. So there's a lot of luminaries that kind of came out of that, I'm name dropping, like Mike Hawthorne and Mike Norton and Steve Rolston. And there was
A
a
lot of the
million
Oni
people.
people out of there.
Yeah, there's a lot of Oni cats that were there. And really, it was kind of like this early juncture of trying to figure out information and talk to people who were on punching at the wall as hard as you were,
Mhm.
because now there's a lot of noise on the internet, right? So then, kind of after that, kind of ran its course. the message board era happened, right? Because like you know about the Ellis Forum, which
Oh
is
yeah,
legendary,
the
and
Bendis
even
board.
the Bendis board. And I was a big um, I don't want to say I was a big voice because I wasn't a voice, but I spent a lot of time on the Oming board.
Hmm.
So Mike Oming, who co-created Powers with Bendis. So it was the mob. It was the David Mack Oming Bendis board, the
Yes.
mob crew. So I was a foo. I was a friend of Oming, and I met a whole bunch of people, and Mike's really great. And then I was just like, you know what? I have this web package because I had a couple of designer friends who were like knew the stuff before you could just go to the WYSIWYG store. And they were like, hey, you have this message board space. I'm like, what am I going to do with 50 message boards?
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Uh, Let's kind of extend this thing to the indie cred. So a lot of people came through there. A lot of people who probably don't even remember I hooked them up were there. Um, who was there? Like I remember I gave Mike Norton had a place.
Yeah.
Um, David, did I give you a spot?
Yeah, I had a spot. The only problem was is I had no one who really wanted to talk about my stuff.
Yeah, I remember it was you. Rick Remender was there.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of people. So yeah, thank you, appreciate that.
No, no, it was great. I remember like, because I was always in, we can, people can join your Patreon and then watch the video where you and I talked previously. But yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, man, I've made it. I've got
Yeah,
my own message board.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
but that was all you hooking me up. And it seems like that whole message board culture actually went really well with the conventions
yeah,
because it wasn't like I was meeting people for the first time. It was like, oh, we've spent a whole year chatting about, Cyclops and a grizzly bear who would win in a battle. And now
right,
we get to like continue that conversation on the convention floor and go out and have drinks afterwards. And then we'll leave from this and we'll get back to the message boards and continue our
right.
endless debates about whatever's going on. And of course, and I was really involved with Fanboy Radio, which in a
Yes,
similar way was Scott Hines, was him just reaching out to everyone. And it was one of those great things because it was a point in the comic book industry where you could really go up to anyone and be like, would you like to talk about, and before you could even finish the sentence, they'd be like, yes, yes,
yes,
yes, I would.
yes,
I mean, because
yeah,
we
yes.
had we had Kevin Smith, we had Alan Moore on the show, and it's like I remember one afternoon I called up Harvey Picar because his number's in the phone book, and I was like, hey Harvey, do you want to jump on a radio show later today?
Oh, okay.
He was like, sure. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
great, let's do it.
Do
But
you do you do you feel like that's well? I know it's hard to get people to do stuff now, and I battle with this a lot, David. This is I don't know. I don't know. This might kind of come back to just reaching out or reaching back or being accessible. But it's been hard the longer we've been around and the more famous people you know who weren't famous
yeah,
at some point, there the contact gets a lot harder to grasp,
yeah,
and I almost feel like I don't want to beg. I'm not begging anybody,
yeah,
right? I've asked people for. I do a podcast with Mike Manley and Brett Blevins, and once in a while reach out to people, and there's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's like, oh yeah, he's cool, or I really like his stuff, or I'm actually friends with them, or somewhere in the spectrum. And a lot of times I'll get, hey man, we used to kick it back in the day. I don't owe you money. I don't want anything from you. You want to just come do this thing. It'll be fun. It'll be an hour. Well, you know what? If you talk to my publicist, we can, you know what? Forget it.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
not, I'm not talking to your publicist.
yeah, it's weird because yeah, friendships get a little bit weird. I remember Raina Telgemeier, who's big on Scholastic. Obviously, I mean, it's insane to think, but her book Smile, I want to say its sales figures are either at or just below Watchmen level.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't, but I remember meeting her back in the day at San Diego Comic Con,
Yeah.
and we got her on the show back when she was just doing the mini comics, and we were friends and we hung out in New York and all this stuff. But um, I remember like maybe a year or two ago, she is so big that at a certain point it's like, yeah, I would love to do all of this stuff, but I'm literally touring for like a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I can't swing by Dallas to do a store signing at Zeus or whatever. And so it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's one of those things where, or you have friends who, you know, um, I know a guy who's now writing in television, but he used to start off in comics,
Mhm.
and it's like, yeah, it's a weird thing because you're like, hey, can you like read my book and like give a quote for it?
So is it a little bit of us being intimidated, or is it a little bit of jerkery from the famous guy?
It probably depends on the person because I know like
Mhm.
for Raina, it literally is just a matter of she has X amount of life and her book stuff takes up this
Mhm.
much, and
Yeah.
so it's like, and then I think part of it also might even be just when you get to that level, now everyone's like asking you for, like, hey, can you help out with this? Can you do this? Would you mind looking at that? And I see, and I'm
Mhm.
probably I'm probably being kinder than what some of them deserve because I think also part of it is and I'm not even naming names at this point, but I do think for some of them it might even be just like they were always looking for the means to an end. Like who's the
Mhm.
next person? And even back, like you can see with some people, even back in the message board days, they were clearly like very strategic about what they were
Mhm.
doing and who they were wanting
Mhm.
to talk to and hang out with. And
Mhm.
I think some of that is just, I hate to say it, Jamar, but I think you were pretty indiscriminate about who you were friends with.
Who knew, right? But yeah, and that's what really kind of burned my toast, David, for a
Yeah.
while. Like I kind of look at my weird 20 something year career in comics as these phases of my adulthood. Like I spent my 20s getting in the door and trying to meet everybody
Yeah.
and figure this out. And you remember me back then, my energy was a lot different. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I was probably annoying, but
No, I was very similar. You and I were cut from the same cloth. I was like, ah,
comics, and I had just kind of like excited. I don't want to say like dork energy, but I was just like, yo, we're in this. I'm chilling at the bar with Dorkins over there and Frank Miller's over there, and we're having Mai Tais, and this is amazing.
yeah,
Isn't this amazing?
yeah,
And like filling my black book. People don't have paper book phone books anymore. Filling my Rolodex with all of these people and starting to bridge relationships with them, like away from the message board. Like I would be that person that may call you
yeah.
once in a while. Hey, what's up? Oh, I'm just at the thing and doing the thing. Oh yeah, so how, all right, cool. I'll talk to you later. Just wanted to check in. That's kind of how my thing would work. So I figured out probably in my 30s that not all these people are your friends,
Yeah,
right? And it's tough. It's kind of like guys grow up in a different way
yeah,
than I think girls do. And then I spent my 40s realizing my phone doesn't ring, and that's okay.
yeah,
And half of these people that I thought were friends were just merely acquaintances.
yeah.
And I put too much pressure on myself to make these things happen.
It's a depressing quote, but I remember there's a quote from Mark Twain where he said, "When I was younger, I was worried what everyone thought about me. As I got older, I didn't care what people thought about me, and when I got even older, I realized they weren't thinking about me."
Oh, Mark, you're killing me.
I know,
Mark Twain, my heart.
I know. The truth of it
Yeah,
stabs a little bit, but you're like, yeah, yeah, that's true.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and so then to revisit some of those things, it's like all right, here's one of my best examples, and I kind of stopped talking about this because I felt like it was turning into my personal narrative. But I went to the Creative and Performing Arts High School here in Philly,
Hmm.
and I was part of this very weird block of time where everybody famous from Philly was in school with me at the same time. Like I was there, the Roots were in school with me, Boys to Men were in school with me, like all of these famous pianists and like musicians and dancers, and it was just like this golden 5 years of these really talented, hardworking, nose to the grindstone kids came through there, and there was a thing where you're watching these people excel, and I think that has a lot to do with my own progress because I know people who are like the best-selling R&B group of all time.
Yeah.
I would eat lunch with them. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like made things look a little more accessible to me. But you hit a point where you go like, oh well, I guess Questlove isn't going to accept my friend request on Facebook. All right, I guess I need to let that go. You know what I mean? And it can be kind of hard because like, yo, we had a thing.
Yeah.
But I think the longer you're in the game or the higher you get, you have to start circling your wagons,
Mhm.
right? And I know that my heart is pure, David
Yeah.
Hopkins, but they don't know, and I can't stress over that. So I understand, but I think it's hard to let people down
Yeah.
in that way, right? I'm sure people press you for time, like somebody you met at a signing is now like asking you for stuff, and you're like,
Well, see,
you
I
know.
I overcompensate though, because I worry about being that guy
Hmm.
who doesn't
It's
make time
easy.
for people. So I will like overdo it. Or people are like, "Hey, will you look at this?" And then like a day later, I'm like, "Okay, I marked it up. I annotated everything. Here's all my suggest." And they're like, "Man, I just wanted you to say you liked it. Like, what are you doing?"
Right, but do they respect that? Are they like, oh well, thanks, dot dot dot?
I think so. They're more like that. No, sometimes it depends on the person, but it is
Yeah,
one of those things where now ask me again in a few years if I still have that same kind of energy.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is one of those things where like I'll go to the comic book store and I'm like, okay, I know that person, I know that person. I mean, and it's there's a line in the movie Almost Famous where she says, "Whenever I get lonely, I can go to the record store and visit my friends."
Oh, so good.
I know, and I'm like, that's what it's like for me when I go to the comic book shop,
Wow.
because I'm like, oh yeah, Jim Mahfood, yeah, like
Yeah.
I've got, let me see, I've got his art like right there.
That's awesome.
I
Food
remember,
one.
I was there when he did that. He was so drunk.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that's right. And it's funny, like to think, and I say this especially to like what ah, it's blowing me up today. Like my friends like Mike Norton and stuff.
Yeah,
I was just like, where are the graybeards now?
yeah,
Like, it sounds really hard to say, but like, we're the guys now,
yeah,
and it's not like, oh, those guys, I look up to them. Like, people look up to you now.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's a power with that.
Well, I was going to transition and say, let's talk about the Scholastic deal,
Okay.
because that's really when we're going to find out. Like, you're going to start having people like, I mean, it's crazy to say because you've been doing comics for such a long time,
Yeah.
but Scholastic, I mean, that's I mean, it's an understatement to say that's a big name. I mean, they're one of the big five in the world of publishing,
Hmm.
and I mean, that's a thing where yeah, your name's going to get out there. Like, so I mean, we may talk in about a year from now, and you're like, dude, every day I'm getting emails from people that want something.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny right now because it's real quiet, David,
Yeah,
and I'm enjoying being underwater right now and just kind of like with the reed in my mouth, like
yeah,
just like looking, and nobody's looking for me that hard yet. But
yeah.
well, let me, if you can humor me for a second. I want to
Please,
kind of break down this news so it makes sense to your viewers.
yeah.
So my middle grade graphic novel, Leon Protector of the Playground, I self-published it a couple of years ago, in an early Kickstarter. David Hopkins, you were, didn't you did you back it?
If I knew about it, I did, because I,
Yeah.
I have a always back Jamar philosophy. Like, just
I'm gonna tattoo that on my stomach
always back Jamar right here.
right here in the Tupac spot right there. Yeah. So we kickstarted this thing, and it took me a while to get it done. And there were a lot of people who I don't I you know how years just disappear, they melt,
Yeah,
David. Time just like it floats away. And then I'm looking at years later, I'm like, shit, I didn't finish that project. And there were people on, this is like early Kickstarter culture where people were like checking every 5 minutes to see what's going on,
hmm,
or like cursing your family name because you didn't give them an update and all that kind of stuff. Like, yo, I guess he just stole our money. I guess he just ran off with my $25, and now I'm in Tahiti drinking really really fruity drinks with your $25. Thanks, buddy. And kind of coming back up against what I think of myself in my head and my heart and all that. I said, I guess you guys don't know me. If I commit myself to something, it'll happen. It may just take forever. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, whatever. And then it happened, and people were like, oh, okay. Wow, I got this thing in the mail. It's amazing. You have all this stuff, and the bag is ornate. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you just gotta wait, bro. So anyway, I'm sorry to be long-winded.
No,
Um,
no, this is what I want. I've wanted you to talk about yourself.
it's weird. I feel like I don't talk about myself enough. So, all right, let me get to this. So, fulfill the Kickstarter, and then what I think a lot of people don't do, and I could be wrong, is I think a lot of people in Kickstarter spend so much time just fulfilling the needs of the backers, then they put the project away
Yeah.
after they made it, right? Okay, I guess I made that. I guess I need to do another Kickstarter. I took Leon and I ran it up the flagpole.
Mhm.
I did my indie self-publisher thing. I got book signings. I went to libraries. I did school visits. I got it in front of everybody's face that I could. I wound up getting picked up by Comcast, David Hopkins, because as I don't know if you knew this, but the Comcast headquarters is in Philly.
There you go.
Yeah, the evil empire, Comcast. Their ivory towers in Philly, and a suit from Comcast was in the comic shop and saw Leon and picked it up and gave it to her kid, and the kid loved it, and then she was like, "Yo, bring this guy in. He's local. This is amazing." And from that, I wound up doing a U.S. tour with Leon on Comcast's dime, and they bought like a cajillion books from me, and it was great. And then I won the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity in 2018, and it was really just punching ahead. And at that point, I was like, I think I'm out of infrastructure.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else I feel like I can do with this book. I can't, there's like I was stretching the limits of what I could do by myself. So that's when I really started making a push to try to get a publishing deal. And it's weird because our indie roots, and
Mhm.
like we talked when I interviewed you for my thing, David, we talked a lot about self-publishing and the power of self-publishing, and how you're controlling all of the things that come in and out. And but I was feeling like there's only so much more I can do to get this in front of people's eyes, and I need people behind me, like the Verizon man. I
Yeah.
need I need those people. So I've been working with an agent for a long time, and finally all the pieces came together, and I wound up in a bidding war, David Hopkins.
I hear that's a good thing.
It's a very good thing. I wound up in a bidding war between HarperCollins, Random House, Abrams for a second, and then Scholastic. And I went with Scholastic. So I have a multi-book deal at Scholastic Graphix,
Mhm.
um,
Which
to
is
do a
Raina.
yeah.
She's through that, and I
Hmm.
think China did something with
Hmm.
Scholastic.
Hmm.
Um,
Uh,
Kazoo.
Kazu, and I talk to Kazu all the time. He's been a really great friend to me, and a guiding beacon.
Oh,
Uh,
he's great.
he's amazing, and shout out to Kazu and the family. They're great. And Jeff Smith's bones over there. It's like
I don't mention the biggest one of all, like Bone.
right, and it's just like wow. It's
Yeah.
like a murderer's row of kid authors, and I'm really happy to be in that space.
Well, let me ask, because I'm curious about some of the nuts and bolts here, and obviously some of it is probably behind the wall of NDAs and other things.
Yeah.
But how long, from the time your agent, like you met your agent, about how long did that whole process take? Like, is this information you've been sitting on for a long time, or is it something where it just went really fast?
Uh, it it was real slow.
Yeah.
So I connected with my literary agent like right after Fist Stick Knife Gun came out.
Hmm.
So that was like almost it's been almost 10 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's been a while.
Yeah, and what had worked for me is that one, I didn't really, and this we could talk about this for a second, but
Yeah.
my ego, and it's weird to think to say that I have an ego, but I do. We all do. We
Yeah.
all have, to succeed in this thing, you have to, protect your whatever your matrix in your chest, right? And it took me a while to listen to what this guy was telling me,
Mhm.
because everything he told me is not the world I came from. Like, okay, well, if you want this to work, it has to have less panels on a page, or it has to have, there's too many word balloons on the page, or one of my early agents that I was talking to was like, it's too colorful, like all of this stuff that was just like, what, that doesn't make any sense, and I just rebuked it, like I rejected
You're like, but
what
that's
they
my
were
style.
right,
That's
but that's, yeah, that's me. What are you telling me you don't want me?
yeah.
And it took me years, David, to kind of just like stop not listening to what these people were telling me, because that is their job, is to sell books,
Yeah.
and a lot of what clouded my vision is that I've come so far by myself.
Hmm.
I'm feeling like I need a partner versus somebody trying to manage me.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of just like internal conflicts in all of this. So finally, I got over myself, and I put this new pitch together, and I'd been to this dance a couple of times already, where a lot of people were like, "Oh, no thanks," or "Oh, that's not a thing," or "No, show us the next thing." "Oh, we love his style." To this time when I did it, and this was years are passing, where, and this is the craziest thing, David. They're like, "Oh, we love Jamar. Oh, sure. What's he got now?"
Yeah.
And I've been crawling up the hill so long that now it's not about who do I need to meet. It's how do you use your contacts that you have,
Yeah.
right? Anyway, don't get me rambling. I'm getting to something.
But
So
yeah.
it's probably been like, with the Leon deal, it's probably been like 4 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But to get me to the point where I am now, with all of like the bidding wars and all that kind of stuff, it was probably the summer.
Yeah.
It took a couple months for it all to kind of land in place.
Let me ask this, because this seems like anecdotally, I've seen one thing, but I've heard publishers say another. And so I'm curious what your take is. I mean, essentially, you were publishing something that has already been published. I mean,
Hmm.
you put it out there yourself,
Hmm.
and I would think that that would be difficult for publishers to go, well, we don't really want that because you already put it out there. We would rather you have something that's been under a bushel this whole time that we could just
Mm,
show to the world for the first time. And
right.
but at the same time, like I even remember with Raina, like Smile and all that stuff had already been out in different forms through her mini comic.
Hmm.
And so it's like, so was it, do you think it was difficult to publish something that already was out in the world, or did it actually make it easier because they could kind of see proof of concept?
It's a good question. Um,
Maybe this is a question for your agent where they're like, oh, yeah, no, it was really hard. Or maybe
no,
it
well,
wasn't.
it's interesting because, like, after, like, I had, when I did the Leon pitch, I was already in the middle of the Kickstarter,
Yeah,
and it was kind of like the horses out of the barn
yeah,
scenario. Like, I got to get this book done. It's already years late. This is what I would love to come out of this Kickstarter deal with a publisher behind me,
yeah,
after everything's said and done. And we showed that around, and it was just a lot of, what is this? And just, mind you, time has passed, before that happened. And I think people's eyes were in a different direction at that point too. It's like, oh, I don't get it. Oh, this is I think there's a kernel in there. I think they weren't interested, period.
yeah,
And I can't say why. I always want to put race in front of stuff, but I never lived my life like that. But there was just like a lot of factors that made everybody say hard pass, right? And I think, to most people, they would go, "Oh, well, I guess I need to come up with something else," because they don't like that. So I just went out and grinded harder, and that's when all that other stuff happened, with the wars
yeah.
and all that. And I'm just like, well, can they look out the window and see what this book is doing? Like I would go to like I went to New York Comic Con a couple of years. It's sold out. Like I was sold out of books. I didn't have any more in my hotel room.
Yeah.
So like Sunday, I just put the sign up and I was just sitting there like shrugging, and it was kind of funny. But I'm like, what else do you want from me?
Yeah.
It's kind of a thing. And this time it was different. I think because the first Leon book I did was kind of this weird patchwork of ideas and a comic strip concept that I was working with, and I just tried to sew it all together. So I think you have the first Leon book, David, or
Mhm.
if not, I'll get it to you.
I don't know if the publishers are like going around trying to burn all those copies so that no one will.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, there's a thing in my deal where I have to cease publication of the first book. And I think at some point we'll come back around to it. But all the stuff I'm doing for them now is fresh, and the first book I'm doing is basically Leon's origin story, which I'm really excited about.
That's nice.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's less you can't do that, and more we don't want to confuse people by showing them two things at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if they hop on to Amazon and they type in Leon, first of all, they're probably going to get the movie. But then,
The
like,
professional, right?
yeah, but then you
Yeah.
get Protector of the Playground. Yeah, they want to see the Scholastic one up there. They don't want to see
Hmm.
the one that came out a few years ago. So I get it. But yeah, that is one of those things where I just wonder, because even with my own stuff, like when I'm self-publishing, I'm going, okay, by self-publishing this, am I blocking myself? Like, am I?
Right, right. It's a weird question, and I think it really comes down to the publisher.
Yeah,
Like I've heard deals where like, oh, you did this indie thing and it sold really well. We'll buy that from you and we'll put a new cover on it.
yeah.
Sorry, and get it back out there. I think everybody's deal is different, or what they think how they could like spin it to benefit them.
Yeah.
But in my case, I think it should be, if not off the market, but it should be off the market soon. So you better go and get your copies
Yeah,
if it,
I
if,
gotta run quickly.
yeah.
Yeah, and
But
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Oh, but and it's even weird with that Leon thing. It's like I found it's on Target online and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay. But yeah, I think I pulled the plug a while ago. I think it's just the distributors have to catch up with me turning off the lights.
Yeah. And when is this is probably a question you're getting quite a bit. When is the Scholastic book coming out? Do they have a rough idea of when that's going to
Yeah,
launch?
I have a schedule already. So the first book coming out will be spring 22.
Okay.
And then every spring thereafter. So it's 22, 23, 24. And I'm hoping that by the end of the second book, we're talking about another run
Yeah.
to extend the series. So, but I got to get the first one done.
Now, if the book when the book comes out in 22, that means you're finishing it in 21, though, because you've got to
Yeah,
be about a year ahead.
yeah, that's exactly how it is. So I'm already on deadline, and my manuscript has to be in at the beginning of next year.
Yeah. Now,
And
when you say manuscript, so they're reading the script and going through that before you actually put pencil to paper.
yeah, and I think it would, I think it serves everybody to look at the stuff as much as you can before I start drawing it. Right. So and this is interesting because
Yeah.
this is a creative thing I'm doing with my bud here. I had to also figure out how I was going to do this because the books are bigger. These are the largest projects that I've ever done.
Yeah.
Um, each book, well, this book might be 260 pages, something like that. It's just a straight graphic novel.
That
It's not.
that's a big book for a graphic novel.
Yeah, it's big, and that didn't mess me up at all. I'm like, all right, cool. We'll just do it. This is
Yeah.
another 100 pages I got to do.
Yeah.
Um, but I had to figure out a way that I could keep moving and show the editors what I was doing and not have a bunch of paper all over the place. Like, especially, as a writer, you have your script, then the art comes in, and I'm sure you're like matching stuff against two documents and
Yeah.
all of that before the type is set. So I created this thing called, I don't think I created it. This is what I'm doing, called a visual script, David Hopkins.
All right.
So my visual script is my thumbnails. I've taken my thumbnails and blew them up to a page
Mhm.
and kind of replace the word balloons with numbers in it, and then uh, uh, the rest of the page is this, the dialogue,
Yeah.
and also notes at the top, like, Leon punches this dude in the face, SFX, thwack,
Yeah.
that'll learn you. You know what I mean? So, and you could just kind of turn through it and kind of keep it moving without having to like look at three PDFs at the same time.
Yeah.
That seems to be working.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my experience working in indie and small press comics was no one was reading my scripts, and really I wasn't getting any edits from the
Yeah.
publisher. They just
Hmm.
wanted me to turn it in on time. So there was this
Is it?
realization that I was like, I could do whatever I want,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think they won't notice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm picking on my publisher, but I
Mhm.
sometimes wonder if they read my book. I'm like, did you look at it? Like,
Yeah, and that made me that kept me up a lot of nights, especially when I did our first pitch
yeah,
for Protector of the Playground, where I would get notes back like, oh, and then the chicken character. I was like, it's a pigeon. Like, did you even read it? I think they just kind of do a fan through, or
yeah,
maybe the junior, like the junior agent, just goes, I didn't like it. Okay, we don't like it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So, and it's just like, well, it's really good in the fifth chapter. Didn't you laugh at this? Huh? Yeah, no, we're not interested.
yeah.
So I was like, all right, it's your loss.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, because you go from really having no peer review, to really having people who are, this is big business for them, and they're looking at it because they're
Hmm.
checking every panel, and you've got a team of people that are looking over your shoulder.
Hmm.
It's good on one end because you're like, okay, I know that those embarrassing typos are gonna go away,
Yeah,
but at the
and
same time,
yeah, and what's really cool is just my early experiences with this. My editor is David Saylor, who's the VP of Scholastic, and it's just like blowing my mind that David Saylor is my editor. So he's a fantastic guy, and the team is really great. Is they told me, I think, did I say this already? Like, they told me, like, we're here to help you make good books. That's our relationship. So think of it like that. Less than you need to die just because the phone's ringing.
yeah,
It's like, hey, what do you think about this, or whatever you want?
yeah,
That sounds fantastic. It's just like, wait, what? You're agreeing with me? um but yeah, so like, even what I was going to say is, like, they're really amazing at plussing your ideas.
mm,
Like, just my preliminary notes from turning in all this stuff, they're like, wow, this is great. What would be good? What if Clementine? I don't think Clementine would say that. That sounds like something Leon would say. And I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Like, they've kind of breathed life into my characters in a way that, how, like, you're facing it and you're like, okay, I think this is how these people feel, and you've done your homework. But then this fresh set of eyes who are now invested in these characters in a different way,
mm,
they want to see what happens next
yeah,
versus what you're trying to get to pour out of your head, are kind of riding along with you, and it's really refreshing.
yeah.
I hope that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. And it's one of those things where a few months ago, I was working with an editor on the book that I'm doing, and yeah, this is a person who at one time was the editor in chief at Del Rey for about 10 years.
Wow.
And she's now freelancing, and I was working with her, and she had these great notes. Like, I was like, man, the reason why I wanted to work with her is because I knew she would make me a better writer.
Yeah.
And quick story, the one bit of advice I did not take. There was one thing she said, and I was like, I got to go with my own instincts on this. I got to trust myself. I feel like I need to do this differently. So it's not that I didn't take her advice. It's just I didn't take all of her advice.
Hmm.
I pivoted just a little bit. I submitted the book, and I got this really great rejection from the
Hmm.
person. And the one thing that they mentioned was the one thing that I did not do that she told me to do. And I was like, oh my
Oh
gosh.
wow. Well, they what do they used to say? Your underwear is showing, David
Yeah.
Hawkins.
I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, like it was embarrassing. I was like, the one thing that I did not do that editor was like, you need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, nah. And then, yeah, that was the
Wow.
thing when the publisher came back. They were like, we really liked it. We thought this was good, this good, but we felt like it didn't start, blah, blah, blah. And it was the thing she had mentioned. I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I
Wow.
guess they've done this for a while. Like this is their business. That,
Right, and that's again, like, that's where I was at when I first started like being really itchy about like, getting these rejections from these publishers. Like, don't you know what, I think everybody that's submitting something feels like they have the most amazing thing in the world. We just need you to understand it or follow the vision. You
Yeah,
see my vision? But sometimes it's just like, yeah, you could use some punching up,
yeah,
and so far my thing is going really fantastic.
yeah.
So.
Well, let me ask this because I mean, working in comics, I had really kind of two types of friends that were artists. I
Hmm.
had those friends who were definitely in kind of the Marvel DC house style.
Hmm.
And I don't want to say they were fast tracked, but there was a clear path for them, which
Hmm.
was I do stuff that's like DC, that's like Marvel. That's where I go, and I'm going to get published by them or I'm not. And I
Hmm.
can keep publishing, keep working and pushing at that. And then I had this other army of artists that I knew that their style was never going to be Marvel or DC friendly. And while they
Hmm.
loved Marvel and DC and they grew up, Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, they were their style was just never going to go that route. And so for them, it was like, okay, I either need to go to like Oni or I need to go to, SLG or whatever other ones are out there, or I just need to figure out my own path here because my style just won't work that way. I mean, for you, your style is, I say cartoony, but cartoony is a word that gets thrown around so much. It almost feels like it's just a
Hmm.
catch-all for saying that you've got a more expressive, exaggerated style. I,
Hmm.
I I personally see some Kirby influence in there, but that's me, looking at
Hmm.
things differently. But like for you, was it just this realization of this is kind of how I draw, and I'm gonna have to figure out who wants to see this because it's not superhero in the way that the Marvel DC stuff is.
Yeah, and that was something that I had to tackle really early.
Yeah,
As when I first started self-publishing in '98, I was doing stuff that I thought was really silly
yeah,
and funny, and I was still trying to learn how to be a cartoonist at that point. And even when I went through a phase, like some of my early origin stories of me showing my portfolio around to like Marvel people and like Joe Quesada. There's a whole story with him, and figuring out like, well, I don't really want to try to force myself to draw a way I don't know how to. I'm not comfortable with,
yeah,
right? Because that's like the early artist conundrum is this is what gets published. I have to draw like this,
yeah,
and then I think the rest of their personality has to shoehorn itself inside that. Versus, you saying, "Oh, I really love Sergio,"
hmm,
and I love how expressive that is. I'm going to do that, or I love the European cartoonists and they're not trying to draw Wolverine,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And just I think, and also me coming from the industry as a comic strip guy, like I grew up loving the comic strips first,
yeah,
and I love comics second. I just felt like I'm never going to draw X Factor,
yeah.
and I'm not trying to do that. So it made it a little easier to just start doing my own stuff. And I think for me, and I don't know, maybe you can challenge this. I'm proud of myself. I have to pat. I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm thinking about this whole thing, especially with the Scholastic deal. It's very rare that somebody makes a career out of doing their own stuff.
Hmm.
It's very rare, So, and not like I had a run on Power Pack, you know what I mean? Or like, they wheel me into the exhibition hall to sign Joker issues. Like I just kind of figured out my own stuff and found an audience. But I totally understand where you're coming from with that question.
It's like there's two parties going on in the same building. Like
Yeah, I like the way you said that.
and,
Yeah.
and we're all hanging out, but it's like, yeah, I'm with this party and I'm in this part, but somehow we're all kind of crammed together because like me, I would really like to see you on Power Pack. Like I would love to see Marvel doing different art styles, but I
Yeah.
think their their format is I don't want to say proven because it seems like the big two are always on the verge of collapse and bankruptcy, even when their
Mm,
movies are making $1 billion. But
literally.
like they're all over the place. But I mean, but I know that they do what they do because they know that style is kind of what works for them. But I'm like, I want to see like different art styles and
Hmm.
stylized look and so yeah, I was kind of wondering now you did. I mean, it's pretty easy. So you came out of a comic strip background, and I was looking on your Wikipedia page because I figured I needed to do some research. You used to do editorial comics, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was so. I think we had known each other at that point. I
Yeah.
was. This was like I get what do they call it? The salad days. Like it was bad. It was bad, bad. And I was just sniffing around the city for anything.
Yeah.
And I think this was like right after 9/11, and nobody wanted anything, and everybody thought the world was going to end at any day. Like, and nobody wanted some young dude's art stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's a famous story I've told some Max, our buddy some Max, about I took a job doing hot sauce labels, and then the lady paid me in hot sauce. Right, it was bad. So I walked into the offices of the Philly Tribune, which is the oldest African American newspaper in the country, and I said, "You guys need an editorial cartoonist?" And the editor was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not political like that, and it was like the hardest job I ever had
Yeah.
because it's like now I'm watching the news crawl and buying newspapers and trying to find these little angles
Hmm.
on stuff. And I think it made me a better cartoonist just for trying to like, do better caricatures and things like that. But my heart was never in it. And I
Yeah.
did it for like 3 years. And here's the best thing. I'll tell you how bad this gig was. I got paid $40 a strip,
Yeah.
and I only had two strips a week. And I didn't know if I got paid unless a check showed up at my house. So they would run the strip. They wouldn't run the strip. They wouldn't tell me what the
Who
op-ed
knows?
thing was. It was just I'm just drawing in the dark.
Yeah.
So sometimes I get $40, and sometimes I get $80, and sometimes I wouldn't get anybody. So, but yeah, editorial.
That's funny. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned $40. I did a editorial cartoon, like I drew it, which that's not pretty, but I drew it in my college paper,
Hmm.
and I got $40 for that. So
They paid you
they
to do
paid
your
me.
college trip?
Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. I was like, okay,
I
I, I
did a.
I'll
Go ahead.
take
I'm sorry.
that. And that's the funny thing because I really should have quit. I really should have given up on that. But they were
Yeah.
giving me $40, and I was like, but it's $40, so I'm just going to keep drawing this terrible, terrible editorial comics. I
What did
did
you do? What did you do with your money? What did you do with that 40? Did you drink it? What
did
what happened? What was,
I was all like blowing all my money. I was probably going to like see movies and stuff because that was the
mm-hmm,
thing to do. I went to a small college town, and there
mm-hmm.
was a movie theater, there was a Dairy Queen, and not much else. And so yeah, I blew a lot of it just on that. But actually, it was kind of nice because I went to a college where if you didn't want your kids to party, you'd send them to this school because there most of the parties that I went to were like in open fields.
Oh, you went to like a pasture party,
Yeah, yeah, it
right?
was
Yeah.
like there'd be like a little bonfire, a bunch of cars just parked all around, and people just hanging out in the field drinking.
That sounds dangerous.
If you lose someone, you got to go back in the morning, find someone just passed out under a tree somewhere. You're like, oh gosh,
Ricky, Ricky. Oh, there he is. Okay,
found
is
him.
he breathing? We found him. We found Ricky.
Woo.
We found Captain Solo. That's great.
But yeah, so but you were working in the editorial cartoons, like that comic strip influence, and then where I kind of like when we first met, I think that was around the time that you were doing Detective Boogaloo, and it was for moviepoopshoot.com, which I know that they were like a big part for you, but I'm so glad that website's dead. Just the name.
Well, you weren't ever really a Kevin Smith guy, were you? You never really
I
kept,
liked
kept
Kevin
for
Smith.
him. Okay,
I
because I
liked. I
know
mean,
there were camps. They were like, ugh, and then they're like, oh, he's amazing.
yeah, no, I was like I appreciated the fact that we had like a nerd in Hollywood and like a real like clearly clearly he's
Mhm.
been reading the stuff that I've been reading.
Yeah.
Um, Now his movies were always kind of hit or miss. Um,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
eh,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no. I remember just like after Comic Con one year, you know Oliver Tull?
Hmm.
Yeah, Oliver and I went to go see Clerks 2.
Ooh.
And I remember we went and saw that and he got out and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't like that at all." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Yeah. All
So,
right.
but yeah, yeah. So the genesis of the movie Poop Shoot thing was,
Because it was a reference to something in one of his movies. Yeah.
yeah, it was Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and this is still early internet, and the whole premise was that Jay and Silent Bob were getting like crapped on by commenters on this website, and they were going to go to everybody's house and punch them in the face.
Yeah.
And so Kevin thought, well, shit, I better actually make this website because people keep trying to go to it,
Yeah.
in real life. So then it turned into like a news portal, kind of like a early Ain't It Cool
Mhm.
or something like that. And somebody reached out to me because I had been doing my Jamar Chronicle stuff. I started doing it online, like as a weekly, and I was on like some early comics portal. I was a Friday strip, and somebody out of the blue, one of Kevin Smith's boys, was like, "Hey, we want to do this thing. You got any ideas?" And I said, "Yeah, I have a idea about a breakdancing detective." They're like, "That sounds amazing. Let's do it."
Yeah.
So I became part of that whole View Askew, Kevin Smith cyclone.
Yeah.
And my first editor was Chris Ryall, who was the publisher at IDW
IDW.
for a
Yeah.
long, yeah, and he's doing something new now. I'm really happy for Chris. But it was a germination for a lot of people. Ryan Otley came from there,
Hmm.
who was doing Invincible for like the most of its run, and he was doing a strip called Ted Noodleman Bicycle Delivery Boy or something like that. And I was just like, wow, this guy's really good. And then he started doing Invincible. I was like, well, of course he's doing Invincible. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
you got to see the things. And there's a lot of people that kind of came from that little camp. But I'm sorry, David, I'm reminiscing.
No,
What
this
were
is
we
good.
talking about?
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
was just Detective Boogaloo, Hip Hop Detective.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was created. I mean, it didn't. Did it exist before Movie Poop Shoot, or it was just?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what happened was when I was doing the Jamar Chronicles, and that was my first self-published stuff, and
Yeah.
it's basically Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
What I was doing is now because like I look at Rick and Morty, I'm like, yeah, that's where I was going. I
Yeah.
was kind of going because they do a lot of dimension hopping,
Yeah.
and I was doing that. And um, Detective Boogaloo was in one of the dimensions that Jamar jumps through, but he was like an Inspector Gadget clone. It was really bad.
Yeah.
Like his Kango opened up and like stuff came out of it, and it was just a mess. And then I was just like, I can't. This is so close to just stealing from Inspector Gadget. I got to change this.
Yeah.
So I was working on the idea, this kernel for this strip. And then when the movie Poop Shoot deal came along, I turned it into a Cain and Abel story with hip hop.
Yeah. So you
So
got the two brothers.
yeah. Can I do my elevator pitch
Go
for you
for it.
real quick?
Yeah.
So Detective Boogaloo, Hip Hop Cop is a story of James Lee Boogaloo, a b-boy from 1984 who falls into a coma after breakdancing on radioactive cardboard. He wakes up in 1994 to find out that his brother, Ice Tray,
Yeah.
is an evil, superpowered rapper and has taken over the city. So now Boogaloo has to join the police force to bring him down.
Yeah.
And he has okay, I'm going to say this on your show,
Okay.
David.
All right.
If you remember Detective Boogaloo, this is early web comics, right?
Yeah.
There weren't a lot, like it was PvP, it was Penny Arcade, it was Control Alt Delete, those guys, and I was doing my thing. And Detective Boogaloo's powers was he could stretch his
Yeah.
arms. And one of my taglines was the long arms of the law. Get it?
Yeah.
When that Ms. Marvel came out,
Yeah.
as come on, man. I don't like this like blow up people's spots, but I'm pretty sure that was influenced by Detective Boogaloo,
Yeah.
because Kamala has a long, like the stretches her arms and her fists get real big.
Yeah.
Come on. I don't need a credit. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, you got to respect the architects is all I'm saying.
Oh, well, oh, gosh, I can't remember her name, but the person who's behind Lumberjanes,
Yeah.
she also did She-Ra.
Yeah.
I swear that she read Emily Edison at one point. I don't think she consciously did it, but I think in the first issue of She-Ra, there are
Hmm.
these robot figures
Hmm.
that look exactly like what Brock drew. And I
Hmm.
and I, I do think I was like, man, there was she read the book at one point. I know she did. Now she may not
Hmm.
remember that she remembered that,
Yeah.
but
Right. No, and this is an interesting little side thing, and I don't know how
yeah,
much time you have because
I'm good.
we're just riffing.
Yeah,
Um, is I think there's a lot of people that kind of like do a hard stop on that, like
yeah,
the woman who they say wrote the Matrix, and then the Wachowski stole it from her, and
yeah,
she's been in court for 25 years.
yeah,
I kind of have this feeling that we as creatives should be able to make more shit,
yeah,
right? And it's almost like the winner is the person that does it first,
yeah.
unfortunately,
Hmm.
right? Or has the biggest audience when it happens. Like in Jamar Chronicles, he had a talking doormat
Yeah,
that he would keep on a backpack, which looks exactly like the map
yeah,
from Dora the Explorer. And Jamar Chronicles came out before Dora the Explorer. There's all these little things,
yeah,
and people will come to me and go like, "Yo," and I'm like, "Well, there's nothing you can do about it. What are you going to do about it?"
yeah.
Even DMC, the DMC comic,
Hmm.
where people are like, "Yo, that looks like Detective Boogaloo." I'm like, I'm not gonna fight DMC. Let DMC do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And now it's weird. We kind of know each other, and I haven't brought up Detective Boogaloo too much with him. But it's just like there's only so many things you can come up with. You just got to figure out how to freak it, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah. Well, and even like, I mean, obviously, hip hop played a big influence on the comic Hip Hop Cop.
Yeah.
Um, are you looking at it now with like kind of today's eyes? I mean, and in some ways, I feel like white people are late to this party. We're like, wow, did you know
A
that,
little late, yeah.
did you know that black people are treated differently than white people by the police officers? We just found out about this. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. Do you have time to hear about the gospel of racism?
Yeah. Guess what I just found out? Yeah. But like, at the time that you were creating it, were you thinking to yourself, wow, this might be kind of charged to have like hip hop cop?
No. Uh, so I'll say, all right. There's three parts to this. The first part is when I was doing it, um, the audience for webcomics was so small.
Yeah.
Well, maybe big because there wasn't a lot of it like there is now.
Yeah.
Is people were just excited that there was something that looked different that they
Yeah.
could read. Like, oh wow. And I think people were missing context even back then. Oh wow, this is so cool.
Yeah.
This is just cool. When's the next issue coming out? This is cool. But I don't think people were actually reading it, right?
Yeah.
So later in the strip, you find out that the city doesn't like Detective Boogaloo.
Yeah.
Like he's the hero to us, but then you find out the citizens are like, we can't stand him. We like the rappers that are taking over the city,
Yeah.
and that was more of a mirror, not on anti-police at the time. It was more of celebrating criminality
Hmm.
that we do as a culture. Like people love Scarface, right?
Yeah.
People love a bad boy. People love the drug kingpin story.
Yeah.
The DEA contraband table with like the guns and the drugs on it. Like that's exciting to people,
Yeah.
right? And so you find out like he's the establishment, and the people that live in Blink City can't stand the was it the ill crimes unit
Yeah.
for the Blink City Police Department. But you have to get that far and actually get the context in it. Now there was some things I was playing with race. It was more about hip hop culture, like the news people. And you think of a news person as a very well put together, articulate
Yeah.
person in a suit. I had the news reporters wearing kind of like really baggy basketball jerseys over their suits, with like baseball caps and headbands and cornrows, and they're like, yo, 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 it's the news, yo, peep it, And I was just really like, it was almost like a big thing of satire, and I was
Yeah.
trying to do satirical stuff that people may weren't expecting, and that's just the whole thing. So the second part of this is I brought Detective Boogaloo back years later,
Hmm.
and this is now in the modern internet where I started doing it for the Metro News Weekly the newspapers, a newspaper syndicate that does free daily color papers, kind of like USA Today used to be a free color thing
Yeah.
that ran in Philly, New York, and Boston daily, and it was a really big thing. And now I'm doing Detective Boogaloo as a comic strip, so I got to check that off my list.
Yeah.
But I would read the comments. Don't ever read the comments, David
Yeah.
Hopkins.
I've given up.
I was getting blown up on Twitter because people were just seeing images. Now we talk about context being lost.
Yeah.
I'm getting people who are like, "Yo, I just saw what is this garbage? How are you portraying the black man as a criminal? You need
Yeah.
to do better." And it's always kind of like, "Did you read it?" I don't think you. And so this is now me having to learn with the new internet and like not to just not everybody's here to shake your hand
Yeah.
anymore. Everybody is highly acutely sensitive, and but the context is missing.
Hmm.
So it's not like, "Oh, let me see where this goes." It's, "I'm offended."
Yeah.
Right. And so then, like, I only got so far before the editors changed and they kicked me out the door. But and I always think about Detective Boogaloo as evergreen. Like, if I brought that back tomorrow, I'd have a whole new list of things to talk about, like
Yeah.
mumble rappers.
Yeah.
The now hip. What is the quote? Hip hop went from selling crack to smoking it. Right. So now everybody's like high on lean, and double cup, scissor, and all that. As a man out of time, Boogaloo would have a lot of things to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Because
I'm sorry, take
no,
the
no, no.
lead.
Because yeah, he would come from the old school and he'd come up to the front and they'd be like, "Well, this isn't. He's singing. That's not rap.
Yeah. Why does he have tattoos all over his face? Why would you do
It should be
that?
Chance the motherfucker singer. He's yeah. No.
Right? Yeah, and that's its own thing. But I worry about that, like,
Yeah.
because people ask me all the time, "When's Boogaloo coming back?" I think it's so like incendiary right now,
Yeah.
like, and I don't want to kind of start drawing stuff that's going to have people trying to shoot me.
Quote.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Put that at the beginning of this.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because when I came into comics, I came to hip hop really late in life, and when I mean really late in life, like my first like I didn't grow up on Wu Tang like a lot of the white kids in junior high that I knew. Um, my my first experience with hip hop was PM Dawn. That was
Oh
my
wow.
I loved PM Dawn.
I, or we can talk about PM Dawn. I love PM Dawn, but
Yeah,
PM Dawn got such a bad rap.
I did.
Pun intended. But go ahead, David.
No, I
I want
loved
to hear
PM
the.
Dawn, but what the thing was when we were going to the comic book conventions, is they'd always do those live art shows.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I really love the music that they're playing right now, and I don't know who that is. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was trying to like hunt down, and this is before you had your phone where you could just hold it up and it would tell you, that
Shazam it. Yeah.
yeah, I go, okay, this is Talib Kweli. Okay, I guess I need to listen to this guy.
Yeah.
Who's this guy? And that's kind of what I was doing. I remember, I think I messaged you. Let's see how good your memory is. I messaged you once, Jamar. I was like, dude, educate me. Give
I
me an
remember
album.
that.
I said,
What did I
give.
get? What
Do
did
you
I give
remember?
you?
I
No,
said, I said, what is the like desert island must? I've got to listen to this if I want to educate myself.
wow, like a day one hip hop thing.
Yeah,
It
I know.
might have been Public Enemy, was it? Nation of
No,
Millions?
no, no, no. It
No.
was Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted.
That's so good. That's so good. Wow, that's kind of wow. I said that.
Yeah, that's the one you recommended to me.
Did you get it?
I did, and I listened to it like every day. And the first thing that I had two big thoughts,
Uh-huh.
and then I had lots of other thoughts about it because it's a great album. But the first thought I had, I was like, wow, this really isn't about me. this is not
Mhm.
my experience at all.
Mhm.
Like this is
Mhm.
this is this is me kind of plunging into a world that I just do not have experience with. That was the
Mm.
first big thought. The second big thought I had was Ice Cube's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Like he's
Yeah.
got a great sense of humor in his
Yeah,
stuff.
he's really funny. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, here's a little side note. Did you know Del the Funky Homo Sapien?
Yeah.
You know they're cousins.
No, I didn't know that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, a little factoid
There
for
you
you.
go.
But yeah, I think I probably, because that was probably me kind of like sliding in under the closing gate, a little race
Yeah.
study for you.
Yeah.
Like, here, why don't you take this and spin that around?
Yeah.
And right, it's just like that. It was kind of like a news report outside of a black person's window
Yeah.
that I think it will be easy for white people to totally miss the context. Like the first NW, well, it's not really the first NWA, Straight Outta Compton. That album is so over the top,
Yeah.
and it got a lot of white fans because it was just like a fairy tale.
It was
Like, yo,
fantasy. Yeah.
yeah, it's fantasy. I'm gonna ride down the street with my homies with our Uzis, and we're blasting fools,
Yeah.
and it's just like you're like in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like when Ice Cube went solo, the America's Most Wanted had so much nuance
Hmm.
to it, in a way NWA didn't. That if you listen to it, you might go, "Oh," and you that light went off with you. So
Yeah. No,
I'm a little happy with myself. Yeah.
it was yeah, it's you talk about like in the world of fantasy, you talk about world building. Like the
Mhm.
NWA world that was being built through their music was very different. Yeah, Ice Cube's world was it was I don't know if I want to say quieter, but yeah, it was one of those things where his observations had a little bit more nuance to them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And no, I would say the album it humbled me.
Mm.
It was one
Wow.
of those things where it's like I'm just gonna listen and enjoy this, but uh, at the same time, you're never gonna catch me trying to pretend like I even know the first
Mhm.
thing about what Ice Cube's been through, and
Mhm.
you know,
And you know what? Go ahead. I'm
different from
sorry. This
PM
is
Dawn too.
Yeah. Now I don't know if you knew this, but PM Dawn got ostracized in hip hop, like where KRS-One and Boogie Down Production.
Yeah,
There's a famous story where they bum rushed one of the PM Dawn sets and threw them off the stage and like put on real hip hop.
yeah, well,
And I think they caught a bad rap. I said it again
yeah,
because they weren't rappers,
no,
right? But I think the climate was so small at the time that anybody that was black and had a DJ behind them, you just said, well, I guess this is rap.
it's hip hop. Yeah,
Yeah, it's hip hop, right? And it is hip hop in its own way, but there was such a imbalance between kind of like the hippie era of hip hop, like De La Soul
hmm,
and the native tongues, like Tribe Called Quest, which seemed to be more street than
yeah,
every one of the rest of that stuff was catching fire, but it was crashing up against the what they call it blunts and Timberlands
yeah.
type of rap, where they're like, "Yo, what is this hippie crap?" But don't get me started. I could talk about rap music all day.
See, that's
I
the
get so
thing.
excited.
Yeah, it's funny though, because yeah, my education kind of came late, where I was like, okay, so I'm listening to this and I'm grabbing this and like kind of throwing it all in together, and it's like when you're literally listening to like I don't know, someone like Ice Cube, and then the next day you're like binging on Mos Def, and it's
Mm,
like there's no context. It's just all sort of thrown in the same bowl,
right.
and it becomes like an interesting thing where you're like, oh, okay, like I'm not seeing the progression because I'm just all at once.
Right. And here's another thing about that to talk about the black experience,
Yeah,
especially to you as a white person. I think if you kind of level all that out and you go, okay, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take Ice Cube, and then I'm going to take Lenny Kravitz or
yeah,
something. I'm going to take Ice Cube, and then I'll take Black Star, Mos Def, and Talib Kweli.
yeah,
I don't see the line or Outcast in
yeah,
NWA. I don't get it. Where is this? And I think that like being black is not a monolith, right?
yeah,
And there's still that thing where it's like, well, all these things have to connect, or this is an evolution.
yeah,
But just to think that there are so many different black voices,
hmm,
and to give black people enough agency to just say, this is my shit. This
yeah,
is what I do. I think it was really hard for a long time for white people to comprehend.
Yeah.
Or like, you ever meet a black guy who's in the Bad Brains
Yeah.
and wears, Chuck Taylors and like dog collars. You're like, you're not from West Philly, are you? It messes up people's black narrative when you have people doing different stuff. And I kind of fit in there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and even like me being a Dallas guy, like my question is always, okay, is Erica Badu as popular in the world as she is in Dallas? Because in Dallas, we would like crown her queen of Dallas.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
in Dallas loves Erica. Like Erica, everyone has a story of an Erica sighting. Like she is, and it's funny because she is a queen among like people love her.
She's like Prince in
Yes.
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you're like,
No,
okay, is she as popular elsewhere? And it's like, well, we
she's
know who she is.
she's what, she's really huge, and she like earned her spot,
Yeah,
and talking about kind of going back to hip hop,
yeah,
you kind of put people into regional boxes.
yeah,
Like, there's East Coast, there's West Coast, Dirty South,
yeah,
but as far as just human beings being from a place, when you think of Dallas, I go, oh, Erica Badu.
yeah,
When you think of Philly, I think people say Will Smith,
yeah.
right? You know what I mean?
You
But
can't
yeah,
say
she's
West Philadelphia without me being like continuing.
right. Right. It's just a thing. But yeah, that's real. It's noted. She's huge everywhere. And just to give a shout out to Philly real quick, is Philly, I think, has a lot of really high functioning creatives that have come out of it. Like, think about Will Smith. Will Smith is probably one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood.
Yeah,
And he was a first rap Grammy award winner.
yeah,
And people forget about that. You know what I mean? He's from Philly, Roots, Boys Men, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Kevin Hart, whatever. There's so many people that come out of this place, and people used to ask, like our buddy Khalid would
yeah.
ask me a
Another
long
Dallas
time.
guy.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah, and you guys are my Dallas crew. I love
yeah,
it. Would ask me very odd questions about the East Coast because he had never been at the time. I don't know if he's been here yet, about like how weird we are or how odd. Because if you like the thing that Trump did a couple of days ago, where he's like, bad things happen in Philadelphia
oh
and everyone
yeah,
aligned with, we loved it. We embraced that. Like, it's on everybody's T-shirt now. Like, it's like we're printing these up as, we can't keep them on the shelf, because there's something weird about us that has always been this hard scrabble town, a
yeah,
very blue collar town. It's a city made out of neighborhoods, and we don't like you.
yeah,
That's just it.
yeah.
So people come here to visit, and they're like, everybody's so mad. Like, yeah, get out.
This is our town.
Yeah, what are you doing here? We don't like tourists. Get out. So, really what that comes from, and I'm sorry to hijack this
No, this
Philly.
is what I want to talk about because we can't talk about Jamar without talking about Philadelphia.
Philly is like, I don't know. I think, people think of, oh, what's a Philadelphian? And I think what people assume is this is like Rocky Balboa,
Yeah,
Ayo, Adrian,
yeah,
is not the whole of the city. That's, if you want to talk about regional stereotypes, that's South Philly.
yeah,
There's a region of South Philly. There's Black South Philly. That's where Black Thought's from the Roots, which is not white South Philly.
yeah,
It's like it's just all cut up into squares. And the thing that we all share is that nobody cares about you here.
yeah,
And people don't, I think what the creative part comes in, David, is that people have to function at such a high level to rise above the din, because nobody gives you false praise here. Nobody's
yeah,
patting you on the back. Oh, I guess you're an okay rapper. Like, no, you have to be the best rapper ever.
yeah,
And then maybe we'll consider buying your record,
yeah,
or you have to leave and then get praise across the globe for them to go, oh, yeah, we'll claim him now.
yeah,
So I think that's kind of the spirit that comes out, like Hall and Oates. Like, I can keep going. Like,
yeah.
so many people from Philly. And oh, so let me get back to the thing with Khalid. So Khalid asked me, I'm sorry, I'm putting his name and everything,
Yeah.
about when the Eagles won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and
Yeah.
they were destroying the city.
Like you do.
And, right. Well, but everybody does that.
Yeah.
Philly didn't invent it. It's just that we have such a bad rep. Oh,
You've
they
made
threw
you've brought it to an art form.
He threw batteries at Santa Claus. Yeah, he was annoying. Get off the field, right? It's just a thing where, if I can kind of explain this, the city is run on heart and grit,
Yeah,
right? That's why Gritty, the Flyers mascot, is so popular. It's exact
yeah,
this weird orange thing that just shows up in random places is a perfect embodiment of the city. The I would say the best example of Philly is Allen Iverson,
yeah.
the Sixers. Allen Iverson is not a Philadelphian; he's from Virginia. All right,
You
which
adopted him. No, no,
yeah,
no. You saw me checking. I was checking to make sure that we're good. I'm good right now. We still haven't even gotten to fist, stick, knife, gun.
all right. We'll go for a little bit longer.
Okay, if you're
Um,
good. But yeah, Allen Iverson. Like I actually wrote an article for the Dallas Observer about Larry Brown,
mm,
and so I got to
Coach
talk to
Brown. Yeah.
I got to talk to his coach for a while. And
Wow.
yeah, but no, I mean Allen Iverson. You talk about a guy who just got his ass beat every night in order to put up those points.
Yeah, yeah. He earned every bucket,
Yeah,
and he's fearless.
yeah,
And he would even say, like in his press conferences, not the practice one.
yeah.
That's a famous of practice. You talk about practice
That is the
is
most out of context like controversy too.
right.
Uh,
Is this guy kind of showed up and he was completely himself,
mhm,
and he left everything on the court.
yeah,
Like he threw like physical harm. It didn't matter. He would go up against Shaq every night,
yeah,
which makes no sense. But it's just like, yo, this is I'm going through you. That's just what's going to happen,
yeah,
and you're going to deal with it. And Philadelphia respects hard work.
mhm,
That's really a thing. It doesn't matter how you do it, but like he'd have to almost get his leg chopped off on the field. I mean, on the court for for people to go like, oh, that was messed up. But yeah, he worked hard for it. We lost,
yeah,
but he bled on the court, and I think that's really how the city works. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like the best thing ever, if you ever saw it, was the Eagles parade after they won the Super Bowl, and they're on the steps of the art museum, the Rocky Stairs for
yeah,
people who have never been here. And Travis Kelsey, who's wearing a mummer's outfit, which is a very weird subculture of Philly, has the most incendiary speech about Philadelphia because they talked about how the entire NFL doubted them.
yeah,
He went through every player on the rosters. Like they said, he can't run. They said he can't catch. He's out of gas. He's too old. Blah blah blah. He was like, and here we are. And he's like, "F you guys," and everybody's like, "Yeah." Right, and it gives me chills every time I watch that. I might have to just send it to you. And
yeah,
that's kind of it. It's like Philly. You don't like us, we don't care.
yeah.
We don't. So
Which
anyway,
honestly is a great formula for being an indie creator.
yeah, I don't care what. Right, it's such a weird badge of honor to be like that. It's just like I understand it and I get it,
Yeah,
and it's not accessible to people that aren't from here. But it's a drive.
yeah,
It's a drive to do what you need to do and know that you may not get praise for it.
yeah. Well, and in contrast, I think about my own experience. Mine was marked by what I would define as unearned confidence.
Mm,
So whereas in Philadelphia, the whole thing was you're going to have to prove yourself. I think for me growing up, it was more realizing I'm not as great as I think I am. Like I had to
mm,
deprogram
wow.
because it's not surprising to me that you've got all of these great black artists who are coming out, and it's like, wow, this guy's really great. It's like, well, yeah, think about like how hard he's been working
Mm,
to get this attention. Whereas for me, I'm like, I need, I need, I need writers and I need other creatives in my life who can show me that I still have a lot to learn.
mm,
And
wow.
when I'm not getting that, I'm not improving as an artist, I'm not improving as a writer because
Mhm,
I'm just kind of going through life thinking that I deserve everything that I get. And so when you get hit a few times, you're like, oh, okay,
yeah.
I still have a lot to figure out. I got a lot to learn. And I feel like that Philadelphia experience, I've probably actually been harmed by not having that experience because
Mhm,
it's like I've just kind of gone through and it's like, oh, yeah. everything, I'm just expecting that things will naturally go my way. And then you actually go out into the world and you find out that the world's not waiting for you to whatever you've got going. And so yeah, it's interesting because yeah, my reality definitely it gets shaken,
Yeah,
but I feel like that Philadelphia experience is actually something that probably benefits the artist more.
yeah. It's I to kind of bring this into another thing like about relationships. I used to meet a bunch of once in a while. I would meet a young cartoonist who was at his first comic book exhibition table. He was so excited, and he had his girlfriend or spouse or whatever next to him, and she was so excited, and she made muffins, and they were so excited, and she was what I affectionately call a cheerleader.
Hmm.
I'm so happy for Brian. I made the name up. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for Brian. This is his dream, and he's so excited, and he's got his mini comics, and we're gonna make $1 million, right, honey? I love you. And he's like, "Grr, grumble, grumble." And Brian isn't around anymore.
Yeah.
And I think there's something weird about early praise,
Hmm.
right? You think about people who kind of like shot up into the stratosphere really early in their career. Those what do they call it? Shooting stars.
Yeah.
And shooting stars, they burn real bright and then they fizzle out. That's how it works. And I think there's something about having people in your circle who respect what you're doing but don't pat you on the back too much. And I struggled through most of my career. Like my lady is a professional. She has her own world going on, and she's never sat behind me going, "Yeah, honey, that was the best lamppost you ever drew. I'm so proud of
Good
you."
job. Yeah.
And she kind of always looked at my thing like, "That's your job. Your
Yeah.
job is to do that. So
Do it.
do it." And it's kind of kept me grounded in a weird way where like it's almost like I'm trying to impress her and impress myself, and I keep, I don't know, climbing the ladder because it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Like there's always something that could be better, or maybe I could do this in a different way or get it in front of somebody else. And the family is supportive, but they're supportive from a distance.
Hmm.
And I guess if I could turn around and go, "Look what I did," and somebody pats me on the head and puts it on the refrigerator, I probably would have been done by now,
Hmm.
right? Because there's that weird support system where it's kind of false praise.
Yeah.
"You're the best cartoonist of all time." Yeah,
Yeah.
but nobody knows who I am. Well,
Yeah.
that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Get a, here's a blue ribbon. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but I
No,
think
absolutely. I feel like I've told this story about 100 times, but I ever tell you the story about Melissa when she was in roller derby?
I've heard some roller derby stories, but no,
Yeah.
I'm not connecting it
Yeah, I know
necessarily.
I've told this story on this particular feed, but basically Melissa, you've met Melissa. She's 5 foot tall, little person doing roller derby, and she said, I don't know if roller derby is something I'm going to enjoy. I don't know if I like it. And I said, well, here's the deal. I said, at some point you're going to get hit really
Mm.
hard, and at that moment you'll know.
Mm. Wow.
And what's funny is not, but maybe a few weeks later, she ended up in the hospital.
Mm.
She got
Hmm.
hit really hard, landed on her head, and had to go and get all like
Yeah.
bound up and everything. And one of the first things I asked her when I went to visit her was like, "Well, do you still want to do roller derby?" And she was like, "Yeah." I was like, "All
Mm.
right, well now you know."
Yeah, 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 that's real. And what's that Mike Tyson quote?
Yeah, everyone
Tyson,
has a plan until they get hit.
all right, you get punched in the mouth. Right. And that, I'm not a violent dude, but I think a lot of people, um, you kind of run into people, especially when we're younger, a lot of loud mouths,
Yeah,
right? And a lot of people to do a lot of this. And you find out people who don't do that stuff have probably actually been in a fight, right?
yeah,
Because if you're used to just lipping off at people, like especially in Philly,
yeah,
nobody's talking to you. If you're just talking a lot, then you're probably not going to do anything. You know
no,
what I mean? But people just start throwing down, and that's just how it is.
yeah,
And you can kind of gauge people about like, oh well, you know what? I've gone this far in my life, and no one's ever challenged me, or I can walk into this room and say whatever I want to anybody I want, because they probably have been hit in the face before.
Yeah.
So I think it's just kind of like a respect thing too. I'm
Mhm.
just rambling at this point.
No, no,
I
no.
think it, right. So it's kind of like I do comics because nobody told me I can't do comics.
Yeah.
Or once you do like I remember when I put out the first like the Jamar Chronicles, for some reason I sent it to the Comics Journal to get reviewed,
Yeah.
and they tore me apart. They were like, it was like Jamar Nicholas has a modicum of talent. Too bad he's using everything he ever learned in this comic book. It's just like they were just like not nice, and I was like, oh,
All right.
okay, okay, I'll try not to do that in the next one. But I think resistance in that way is good. Being challenged is good. It's having somebody in your corner to go, okay, well, what were you trying to do? I'm
Yeah.
glad you did that, but what are you trying to do here? And kind of calm yourself down is important.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm actually we're getting to like an hour and a half right now, so I think I'm gonna cap this interview conversation that we're having. But we never got a chance to talk about fist, stick, knife, gun.
You want to throw it in real quick? I
Real
can be
quick.
fast.
Now, the funny thing about this one is I know you were working on Detective Boogaloo. I knew about Leon. This one kind of came out of nowhere for me. Like you were working,
Really?
and then all of a sudden you're like, and I did this whole thing. I was like, wait, what? Like, where have I been?
Yeah, I
I
guess
know
you
it
did.
doesn't
I
feel
was
like it for you, but for me,
no.
it was like you just kind of pulled it out and like, and I did this huge thing that,
What did you think of the project if you got to read it?
well, when I finally got to it, I was like, wow, this is like really, I hadn't read the original, the memoir,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I didn't know anything about it, but it was, I mean, going from Detective Boogaloo, obviously, which is a whole different world. This was tone-wise which
mm,
was a huge shift,
yeah.
but it totally felt like you. And yeah, it was kind of like you weren't like, at least I didn't know that you were like sending out like sample pages or here, check out, I did some sketches and I'm going to share this and that. Like it seemed like it was really, and this is my perspective, it seemed like you were kind of really working on it in a cave somewhere and then just kind of emerged into the daylight and shared it with everyone. But
Wow, you're right. Yeah, I had never thought about that. This was kind of like in a weird
yeah,
social media place where you weren't really, I don't think Facebook was even a thing you could post images to
yeah,
at the beginning. It was just all text,
yeah,
right? And then they're like, oh, you can add pictures? Okay. I think that's how it worked. And I was so busy, I didn't have time to talk about it.
yeah.
And I think the times I did talk about it, people had no idea what I was talking about, and I
Yeah,
got frustrated.
I think one time you mentioned I was like, oh, he's like doing spot illustrations or something, or
Right,
yeah,
right, right. And but that was my biggest project up to that point. It was like 150 pages,
yeah,
and doing adaptation is a whole different animal. We could talk about that maybe next time.
yeah.
But it's a giant project, and 10 years has gone by since that book, and it's still really relevant. I
Hmm.
get I get asked all the time to do talks and send books to people, and they teach fistic knife gun as social justice classes at a lot of colleges. It's crazy.
That is cool. Now, are they doing like the original? I guess it's was it Jeffrey Canada? Like,
Yeah, it's right there, right
yeah,
over there.
there
Yeah,
you go. Yeah,
yeah,
I can't see. Okay. But they're
yeah.
they're they're doing like the graphic novel though. They're sharing that one. That's
Hmm.
really cool.
Yeah, super cool. And I'm glad that. And I kind of at that point I was like, this stuff takes me so long to do. I don't want to do anything that I don't want to do at
Yeah.
this point. So if a project takes me 4 years to do, I want it to be worth it.
Mhm. Well, and it's interesting because I think when you look back on it, like I can see kind of the trajectory of your career, but obviously when you're in it, you're like, okay, I've done this. Now I'm going to go and do this thing and figure out kind of what works. But
Hmm.
like to
Here's
me,
some.
oh,
Oh, go
sorry,
ahead. Go
what
ahead.
were you going to say?
No, no, no. You go. To me, what? Go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, to me, like, yeah, I definitely see this sort of, I don't know, that your work has had throughout the years this sort of um, sensitivity is probably not a word that you would use a lot in Philadelphia, but I do feel
Mhm.
like there's a certain sensitivity to saying um, the experience of Black America, where we go from hip hop, we talk about violence, we talk about, you know, even Leon, where you've got, what does it mean to be a kid and growing up and dealing with bullies and dealing with your identity and being true to yourself. Like there's just this overarching sensitivity uh, for the experience that I think to me, I see a very clear sort of line, but I'm sure
Mm.
at the time you didn't see that, or maybe it wasn't as something like, oh, this is going to be my brand as an artist.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
I lean more into it, David, is that almost all of my projects have had black main characters,
Hmm.
and the front matter of all that wasn't because they were black. It was just a matter of the fact
Yeah.
of the character. So, and I think people have been really wary of. Here's the thing about oh, mommy, why does everybody hate me because my lips are big? Type of shit. Like I'm not into that.
Yeah.
Oh, you could even call that struggle narrative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or struggle porn.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to. I'm not doing slave stories.
Yeah.
I'm not doing stuff like that, or just like the struggle. Like I want to do stories about people who live their lives being brown,
Yeah.
right? And we all hopefully know about people who aren't the same color as us,
Yeah.
and being able to relate to each other. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I remember my oldest daughter, Kennedy, came out a few years ago as gay, and I remember wanting to be the big supportive ally dad. Um, I'm like sending her all this stuff and like books that I found, and I didn't realize it at the time, but like all the books were about like how terrible it is to be gay.
Oh wow.
Like these kids, like the narratives were struggle narratives about rough lives and people being thrown off to conversion camps and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, Kennedy, who is I really love the fact that she's willing to call out her dad. She's like, Dad, I don't want to read any of these books. Like this is just about how sad it is. Like I want to read love stories and fun
Hmm.
kid like all of these stories are just about how rough everything is.
Right.
I want different narratives. And I was like, oh yeah, you're kind of right. Like, but
Uh,
but part of that is when I'm Googling and searching, like that's what was out there. That was the stuff that was selling, and that was the stuff that was popular. And we throw around the word ally, and I'm trying to be like the good ally and stuff. And it's like,
mhm.
well, first of all, let's yeah, the struggle is part of it, but I want some joy. Like,
I have two things real quick. So when Fistic came out,
yeah,
this was kind of like 10 years ago, and the graphic novel landscape was a lot different
it
then,
was.
right? And I didn't I didn't expect much from the project. I had people told me you'll never see this book earn out of your advance, so don't even think about a royalty check, like all the kind of stuff. And um, I think that the publisher put it up for the Eisner nomination, and I later, like years down the road, it didn't
Yeah.
get in. I was at a luncheon with a bunch of bigwigs, and somebody was like, "Oh, your fist stick knife gun. We love that book." I was on the committee, and we didn't pick it. We picked Struggle Narrative B,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, which black struggle story are we going to pick? Because we can't have two.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll take this one. And I got some really weird. I've read the comments. Don't read the comments, David. On Amazon about Fist Stick, somebody was upset because Jeff, at the end of the story, didn't kill anybody. He didn't go to jail. That wasn't a satisfying ending. He
Wow.
basically learned how to rewrite his course without taking a human life. But people are so entrenched with like the Judge Joe Brown story. I had a troubled childhood. I went to jail, and then I made something. I made something of myself. That's the black story to a lot of white people. You have to come from the bottom to ascend. And like, what if you're just a good person at
Mhm.
the beginning? That's
Yeah.
not interesting to people, apparently. You
Well,
know.
and I wonder if there's also this sort of sadistic desire just to see black people punished. Like,
That's spicy, David Hopkins. Yeah,
but yeah, because when you get really fixated on that, it's like if I watch another slave movie, I'm like, yeah, that was really rough. But I also just watched like 3 hours of people getting tortured and beat up. And I'm
yeah,
like, is that a I,
right.
I can only consume so much of that before I go, okay, is this sadism
Right,
at a
right.
certain point?
And also, you have to understand that that stuff isn't for us. It's
Yeah.
not for black folks.
Yeah.
That's to entertain you,
Yeah.
and I don't even think it's to make you feel bad. It's entertainment, and
Mhm.
that makes that's the porn part to me.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you getting out of watching this? Like, because we told the story already, you get it. You saw roots. Isn't that enough?
Yeah.
Let's move on with black excellence. And there's a lot of really great stuff being made right now that just kind of covers all those bases. But I don't know if a lot of white people are checking for that.
Mhm.
Like, who's reading Bitter Root by David Walker? That's an amazing book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many great things out there. I could go on all day giving
Yeah.
people plugs. But I think people are caught on the 100 Years a Slave thing, the Amistad thing, the Hidden Figures thing,
Mhm.
and which is good in its own way. But like the help,
Yeah.
or all those type of things is like,
Oh.
oh, okay, get it, got it, good.
Yeah. We could talk about the help. That book has got some problems.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
yeah, it's I mean, and even like authors, N.K. Jemisin just won the MacArthur Fellowship grant, the Genius Grant, and it's like,
mm-hmm,
yeah, there's just some really great authors out there, and when people finally discover them, I'm like, they've been around this whole
mm-hmm,
time.
mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
where have you been?
Hmm.
And
Here's my last thing about
yeah,
Fistic. 'Cause you were talking about going in a direction.
yeah,
I don't know if you're familiar with Octavia Butler,
yeah.
the futurist, the Afrofuturism writer who
Her book,
died.
the book that I guess she was best known for, finally, oh gosh, it just finally reached, what was it, the New York Times bestseller status, or just finally, I can't remember what it
Wow.
was, but it did finally just like post after she passed away, it finally kind of outsold some of the numbers that she'd been trying for a long
Mm.
time.
Was that Kindred or Parable of the Sower or one of those guys?
I
Or
want to say it was Kindred.
yeah. It was a funny little story between you and me and your audience is that after Fistic Knife Gun, I got asked to do the graphic novel of Kindred.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And then there was a lot of administrative juggling with the state and the publisher I was with at the time, and it just kind of fell behind the couch and it didn't happen. And then, a couple of years later, John Jennings and Damian Duffy got it,
Hmm.
and they did a fantastic job with it and won an Eisner, the graphic novel adaptation of Kindred. And I think they're doing more Octavia Butler books. And it's great because the stories are out there now.
Mhm.
And if you could think about what's deserve it, I don't mean deserve it like in a fancy way to be turned into a graphic novel. I think Butler's catalog really, really deserves that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, as we could keep talking about this because yeah, there's just yeah, I'm even looking at her own wiki right now, and I mean, yeah, she was writing all the way back in the 1970s. So I mean, this
Yeah,
is
yeah. And have you watched Lovecraft Country? Have you gotten into that?
that is on the top of my to watch list, but I dropped my HBO subscription, and so
Oh wow.
I have to wait till it gets on the like buy per episode thing with
Mm.
Apple.
No, you got to get that Fire Stick, bro.
I know I need to get that set up because yeah, that is absolutely at the top of my to watch list because all of my favorite writers have been talking about it nonstop, and so I'm like, okay, I need to check this out.
It's a roller coaster ride. It really is. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but
Yeah.
that's must see TV for me. And it's just talk about really excellent storytelling with black voices and black bodies, and just, oh man, it's fantastic.
Yeah. No,
So
that is one that yeah, because as I said, all the readers or all the writers that I follow, they're all like every week they're talking about it. And I feel like there's this great party that I am missing out on. So so once it's available for me to buy, I'm gonna go and grab it. And
grab it.
I
Well,
don't even know if I'm gonna binge it though, because it feels like one where I gotta like watch an episode and then let it marinate for a while.
yeah, I feel like you have to watch it and then kind of sit on the couch for a day and just think about it, and then maybe read a news piece,
Yeah.
then watch the next one. Actually, after the episodes go off, there's some sort of like podcast that comes on, kind of like Talking Dead
Yes.
or something like that, where they kind of break it down. I haven't listened to those, but I hear they're helpful because almost every shot has some sort of imagery or callback to something.
Yeah.
and it kind of rewards you if you're learned or you can pay attention.
Yeah, and see, I love stuff like that where it's like, okay, if you're really paying I mean, it's not necessarily crucial to the story, but if you're paying attention, you'll notice that this is a reference to something that was going on here, and yeah, no, that's
Well, I
good
don't
stuff.
want to talk your ear off, man. We could talk all day.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the file size. Am I going to be able to upload this to YouTube if it gets too?
All right. We'll cut it off. We'll cut it off.
Sounds good. Well, Jamar, it was good talking to you, and sometime, as I said, we need to have a conversation where we're not recording it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's try that. Maybe we'll meet. We'll meet in a field. It's social. Have a socially distant coffee hour.
Yeah, well, no, I'm used to meeting in fields because of my college experience.
See,
This,
we bring it all the way back around. I'll get a mini keg, and then we'll tip over some cows. How's
yeah,
that
there you
sound?
go. Well, if we're tipping over cows, then we got to bring Khalid and Samax over as well because I know they miss you.
Yeah, man. I would love to get back over that way.
Yeah,
Maybe when things loosen up, I'd love to do some travel. Or
yeah.
maybe during my Leon book tour for Scholastic, I'll come through Dallas. How's
You
that?
need, well, that is definite. You have to come through Dallas.
Hmm.
Like,
Have to.
you
Yeah,
have to. We got
I
Zeus
can't wait.
Comics here. We've got some great bookstores.
Let's prime the pump,
All
bro.
right.
Let's get it set up.
Okay, yeah, let me know who I need to like send my email campaign to make sure that we get your tour through Dallas.
Okay, let's get that campaign going.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
All right. Well, Jamar, you take care and
Thank
you
you
have
so
a
much.
great rest of your day.
Thanks, David. It was great talking to you,
You
and thanks
too.
for having me on your program.
I know. Thank you.
All right, I'll see you soon, bro.
See ya. Bye.